Never told, the devastating truth about Paul's slave identity that haunts today. In the damp, echoing halls of the old estate, secrets lay buried like the damp leaves outside. Paul, an unassuming caretaker, held a truth that twisted around him like shadows in the night. Underneath his gentle smile, he carried the weight of a history that few could imagine, a slave identity that clawed at his soul. Who could have guessed? Every door creaked open to reveal whispers of the past, but none audacious enough to speak Paul's story. It was rumored that every tick of the grandfather clock resonated with the heartbeats of those who had come before him, their fates stitched into the very fabric of the walls, unearthing tales of haunted ancestors. The local teens dared each other to explore the estate, their faces painted with curiosity and dread. They'd heard of the strange occurrences, the flickering lights, the cold drafts, the way shadows flickered in the corners of their eyes. One daring girl claimed that Paul spoke to the spirits, seeking guidance from voices only he could hear. And it wasn't just haunted tales, it was a history that buried its tendrils deep, waiting to suffocate. As whispers grew louder among the townsfolk, unease seeped into their marrow. "He knows something," they murmured. "He's connected to something dark." The community watched Paul with wary eyes, children pointing fingers, wives behind curtains, judgment palpable in the air. What lay beneath his surface? Was it fear or solidarity that gripped their hearts? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With the evening's chill creeping in, Paul stood outside, looking over the landscape that seemed too quiet, too lifeless. A glint of something mirrored in his eye, a reflection of a dark truth that whispered back to him. Who had he been, really? The questions clawed at him, relentless. It wasn't just skin deep, it was a haunting legacy traced back to chains, to cries that echoed long after the sun dipped below the horizon. And as he turned back toward the house, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever enigma he had lived with was ready to surface, to rip apart the fragile threads of his reality. What was the truth that lurked behind his past? What skeleton lay in those shadowy attic corners, waiting to come alive? The unsettling notion prickled his skin. Was it time for the world to finally see? The night wrapped the old estate in darkness, each window flickering, casting ghostly shapes against the walls. Paul moved carefully through the musty halls, the wood beneath his feet creaking like the old bones of the house. He could feel eyes, unseen yet suffocating, watching from the corners. What secrets were trapped within these walls? What emotions lingered, like the mildew that silently claimed the corners? He reached the attic door, heart pounding in unison with the echoes of the past. Was he simply a caretaker, or had he been thrust into this role by fate? Each step felt heavier as he climbed the short staircase, thoughts swirling in his mind like a storm. The air shifted, charged with an electric tension that made his scalp prickle. As he pushed open the door, a gust of cold air met him, sending shivers down his spine. The attic was cluttered, remnants of lives once lived piled high, old photographs tangled in the cobwebs, forgotten toys resting amidst dust. His fingers brushed against a tattered suitcase, a sense of foreboding washing over him. What stories had these items witnessed? Paul's heart raced as he stumbled upon a mirror, cracked and clouded, its surface reflecting only fractured images of himself. In that moment, he felt a sudden pull. Memories, half-formed shadows, hovered at the edge of his mind. He searched deep within, desperate for clarity. The reflection seemed to laugh back at him, mocking his search for identity. Then, a sound not of the wind or creaking wood but of whispering. Low, urgent whispers melding from the shadows. "Find us, set us free." They tugged at him, calling his name, urging him to uncover the truth trapped in the steely clutches of the estate's history. The chilling words battered against his mind like a drum. Suddenly, the urge to run gripped him fiercely. But what if, by running, he missed the revelation? The truth that might finally lift the veil shrouding his existence. Paul clenched his fists, grounding himself amid the turmoil. He had to stay in the far corner. He noticed a loose floorboard, its edge raised ever so slightly. A whisper of instinct surged through him. With trembling hands, he knelt and pried it open. Wood creaked, surrendering to his determination. There, hidden, lay an old leather journal, its spine cracked, its pages yellowed with age, like the stories it contained that he couldn't breathe. What had he found? The possibility of uncovering forgotten truths filled him with dread and excitement. Opening the journal slowly, he was hit with an overwhelming scent of time, a mixture of decay and lost moments. Each word captured was a heartbeat, a soul crying for acknowledgement. That as he read the first few lines, the chilling stories poured forth tales of agony, struggle, and the undeniable bond to him. They begged for recognition, for understanding. Paul's world spun wildly, threads of his identity began to weave together, unraveling the tangled fabric of his past. Just then, a loud crash echoed from below, shattering the fragile piece of the attic's suspense. Paul snapped the journal shut and shot a glance back, heart racing. What was that? Was the house awake now, restless with the history that demanded to be acknowledged? Or was it the community, emboldened by their suspicions, coming for him? With the echoes of his ancestors looming just beyond reach, Paul's pulse quickened. One question dominated his thoughts: had he opened Pandora's box, or was he about to ignite the flames of his own haunting? He took a deep breath, the fear electrifying his senses. He couldn't walk away now. The answer was near, and he could almost taste the truth. But would it save him or lead to his undoing? In the depths of the night, shadows crept closer. And just like that, the ground beneath Paul shifted, the echoes of the past and present colliding. What demise awaited him as he stepped into the uncharted depths of his own story? The attic door slammed shut, making Paul jump. It felt as though the house breathed in sharply with him, consuming his startled gasp. The loud crash from below echoed up the walls, vibrating through his bones. He couldn't shake the feeling that something awakened, something malevolent stirred beneath the surface of the estate. For a fleeting moment, the whispers quieted. "Find us, set us free." Now it almost felt like a demand, a hungry urging buried in the walls. The journal lay heavily in his grasp, its leather cover slick with sweat from his palms. He glanced at the mirror again, its shards reflecting fragments of his terror-stricken face. Fear clenched his throat. What had he unleashed? Taking a steadying breath, Paul turned his attention away from the door and the impending terror below. He needed to look deeper into the journal. Perhaps the stories inside would provide clarity, or they might unravel the very fabric of his existence. He opened the journal again, flipping past brittle pages filled with scrawled notes and sketches. One entry caught his eye immediately, with a date scrawled in shaky handwriting, April 15, 1943. The words seemed to bleed from the page. "The day she was taken," it read. Paul felt ice crawl up his spine. He couldn't shake the thought that something unspeakable had happened in this very house. He looked around, half expecting to see the ghost of the writer hover near, the air fragrant with despair. Then he read further, his heart racing as names and events flowed from the journal. The pages told of a family torn apart by circumstance, a lineage marred by secrets and pain. As he dove deeper, themes emerged: betrayals, shadows of violence, and guilt that suffocated those who had come before him. The room felt alive as Paul read, pulsating with anger and sorrow, an unyielding storm of emotions that made his hands tremble. He focused on a name: Evelyn. Paul knew that name. It plagued him, standing out like a burning beacon amid the chaos. Who was she? What had she witnessed? Another crash resonated through the house, followed by what sounded like footsteps echoing through the empty halls beneath. Panic surged within him. He couldn't stay isolated in the attic forever. He had to confront whatever was down there. He stood abruptly, journal close to his chest, and made his way to the attic door. A decision lay heavy on his shoulders: should he delve deeper, or should he escape? The whispers swirled in his mind, urging him to stay, to unravel the truth. But the crashing below was an ominous reminder that time was running out. Pushing the door open, he took a breath, steeling himself. The darkened corridor yawned wide before him, teasing with secrets, dangers, and something he couldn't quite define. He felt a tightness in his chest as he listened. Voices, though faint, drew him closer. "Set us free." It wasn't just a plea now, it felt like an echo laced with urgency. He crept into the hallway, senses screaming. The atmosphere dripped with tension, thick like molasses. The darkness seemed to move, shadows slithering away from his flashlight beam, retreating as if afraid of what he might uncover, but there it was again, the unmistakable sound of laughter, chilling and cruel, rising from the floor below. It mingled with the whispers, forming a cacophony that pulled at his sanity. What reality was Paul stepping into? He reached the top of the staircase and hesitated. Should he descend into that darkness? Would he become another chapter in this haunted legacy? With a deep breath, he decided to confront the echoes of the past. He stepped down, footfalls tentative yet resolute, every creak of the stairs sending adrenaline racing through him, the laughter crescendoed, a twisted melody inviting him deeper. As he descended, he had one urgent thought that gripped his heart: what waited for him in that darkness below? Was it the truth he sought, or the very chains that had bound those before him? Each step brought Paul closer to a truth he might not survive to tell. The air thickened as Paul descended into the darkness, each step echoing like a whisper of what lay in the shadows below. The laughter, a blend of mockery and joy, taunted him, inviting him deeper into the depths of the estate's secrets. With every creak of the stairs, he felt the weight of countless eyes watching him, unseen but undeniably present. What awaited him on the ground floor? As he stepped off the last stair, the cool chill of the wood floor sent a shiver racing across his skin. He turned to the left, where the murmur of voices grew louder. They weren't just whispers anymore, they had transformed into a chorus of anxiety and yearning, a desperate demand that echoed off the walls. "Find us." The voices pleaded, a haunting melody that tugged at something deep inside him. The shadows danced across the dimly lit walls, and flickering candlelight illuminated the outlines of what seemed to be family photographs hanging crookedly, as if aware of something they dared not reveal. One photo caught his eye, its edges tattered, the faces faded. There she was, Evelyn, the woman from the journal. There was a softness to her gaze that belied the ruthless history he had just read. Was she a victim, a prisoner of this place? Or something else entirely? He stepped closer, the journal clutched tightly in his hand, intent on delving deeper. Just then, the laughter erupted once more, sharper, metallic. It sliced through the air, and Paul staggered back, his heart hammering wildly in his chest. The sound felt alive, filled with malice, resonating in hollow laughter that turned his bones cold. He whipped around, scrambling for a light switch, his breath hitching in his throat as his fingers brushed against the wall. The switch flicked, and the room exploded with harsh, fluorescent light. For a moment, he thought he saw shadows dissolve, fleeing from the sudden brightness. But in that instant, the laughter ceased. An eerie silence wrapped around him, so thick it pressed against his ears, and all he could hear was his own heartbeat. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the room, searching for the source of the sound. Then he saw it, the dust-laden mirror at the far end of the room, its frame ornate but cracked, like the lives it had reflected. Paul approached hesitantly, a knot forming in his stomach as he caught his reflection staring back. But just behind him was that a movement. Shadows flickered across the floor, coiling around his feet like serpents. "Help us!" A voice, low and desperate, came from somewhere just beyond the mirror. Paul staggered back, his heart racing. Was he losing his mind? The whispers seemed to swirl around him again, voices in agony, voices imprisoned between time and space. Overwhelmed, he gripped the journal with white-knuckle intensity, the leather slick against his clammy palms. Was this what they meant by setting them free? The question echoed through his mind, merging with the fragments of family histories he had just read. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated from above, an unseen force shaking the floor underneath him. Gritting his teeth, Paul turned with renewed determination. He would not be frightened out of this place. He would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. With his heart hammering in his chest and urgency driving him forward, Paul made a decision. "I will find you," he murmured, steeling himself for the horrors that lay ahead. But as he drew closer to the mirror, a thought pierced his resolve. What if the meaning of setting them free twisted into something far darker than he imagined? The laughter returned, now mocking, as if the house itself delighted in his uncertainty. And with that, Paul knew he was diving into a well of darkness he might never escape. What truly lay beyond the confines of the mirror? Would he confront the legacy of the family, or would he become just another part of its unending story? And then, just as he reached out to touch the cold glass, the lights flickered and went out, leaving him alone in oppressive darkness, the laughter the only sound echoing in the void. What awaited him beyond that reflective surface? The darkness swallowed Paul whole. He could barely differentiate between his own startled breaths and the echoing laughter that now seemed to dance mockingly around him. Panic gnawed at him, squeezing his chest. With trembling hands, he dared to stretch out toward the mirror, fingers grazing the cool surface. Suddenly, a gust of air whipped through the room, chilling him to the bone. It swirled around him, brushing against his skin like a ghostly caress. He yanked his hand back, heart racing. What lay beyond that reflective surface? Was he prepared to find out? "Help us!" the voice beckoned again, a haunting resonance that wrapped its fingers around his mind, pulling him forward. Paul took a hesitant step closer, fighting against the sense of dread that urged him to turn and run. He felt drawn in, as if the very fabric of the darkness was inviting him to uncover its secrets. Then, without warning, the mirror flickered. A fleeting image appeared, a glimpse of anguish-stricken faces. He gasped, leaning closer. One face looked strikingly familiar. It was Evelyn, her eyes glistening with tears, whispering silently. Behind her, shadows moved, twisting like dark tendrils in a macabre dance. "Paul!" Came another desperate plea, this time sharper, raw with desperation. It shattered his disbelief, his reason. Suddenly, he felt a connection. He needed to understand. Were these the souls trapped in this estate, forever imprisoned by their past? Were they begging for liberation, or was it something far more sinister? A crash echoed once more from above, interrupting his thoughts. It felt louder this time, a rumble that resonated through the skeletal frame of the house. The laughter returned, a cruel chorus that wrapped itself around him, daring him to stay and witness the horrors yet to be revealed. That he stepped back, his heart racing as the mirror shifted again. This time, it wasn't just faces he saw, scenes from a past drenched in darkness. Family gatherings turned hostile, laughter morphing into screams. Words echoed from the past, swirling like a tempest around him. "You must obey." Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought against the rising tide of fear. He recalled the journal, its pages filled with family darkness, secrets and unresolved traumas that felt almost tangible. Fragments of truth piled up like stones in his chest. Could uncovering this history truly set someone free, or would it open the door to horrors he might not survive? A low tremor rippled through the floor, rattling his bones. The laughter crescendoed into a cacophonous opera of despair, and shadows flickered at the corners of his vision. He gritted his teeth, battling the urge to flee. "Find us!" The voices rose in unison, a desperate chant that ignited something deep within him, a resolve born from the chaos. Maybe he was the one meant to uncover the truth of Evelyn's plight. As he took a deep breath and prepared to reach once more for the mirror's surface, the lights flickered back on. Intense, blinding light flooded the room. Paul shielded his eyes, the sudden brightness battling against the darkness he had just embraced. Yet, when he opened his eyes, the mirror's image had changed. A scene unfolded before him, so vivid, so raw. It tore at his heart, the sorrow of betrayal, the weight of chains long worn. And then he realized a revelation struck him hard: this was no ordinary family drama. Something deeper intertwining every life that crossed the threshold of that cursed estate. But just as he grasped the enormity of what lay before him, the light flickered again, and went out. What dark truth would he be forced to confront in the pitch black? What twisted fate awaited him in the shadows? The silence pressed down on Paul like a thick fog, heavy and suffocating. He stood there, trembling slightly, as a sense of impending doom filled the void left by the extinguished lights. The shadows loomed around him, each a monstrous reminder of the hidden truths he had yet to uncover. An uneasy stillness settled, broken only by the faint scratching sound reverberating in the darkness. It was like nails against wood, drawing closer, creeping in on him. He strained his ears, every muscle taut with anxiety. What was it? Help us. The whisper skimmed the air, almost playful yet infused with desperation. Had it intensified, or was his mind playing tricks on him? Heart pounding, Paul's instincts kicked in. He needed to move. He stumbled back a step, feet shuffling against the cold, wooden floor. The mirror, that cursed mirror, was both his guide and his tormentor. Find us. The chant echoed loudly in his mind, a relentless beat that throbbed through the cacophony of fear. Paul took a breath and squinted into the dark, trying to glimpse the surface of the mirror if only to anchor himself. The reality was, he couldn't stay in this room, in this house, without knowing what it wanted from him. The pictures, the faces, they wouldn't leave him alone. As he stumbled toward the door, an unseen force gripped his ankle, and he halted mid-step. Panic clawed at his throat. He looked down. Nothing was there, just the floor, yet the pressure held him in place like a vice. Stop! The voice, now shrill and urgent, resonated in the stillness. It wasn't just a mere echo. It felt like it pulsed from within him. Don't leave. What do you want from me? Paul shouted, his voice snapping, cracking. The shadows clung to him, thickening around his body, compressing the air. Find the truth. The chorus cried, the urgency ramping up, pulsating with each syllable. Don't forget. Forget what? His mind raced as images flashed in his thoughts: a woman's face, her eyes filled with despair, her lips moving silently. Evelyn. The words he had never heard. A message buried deep within family obfuscations. He pulled against the invisible grip, finally breaking free. Paul bolted towards the door, but the floor beneath him quaked violently. With each stride, he felt the ground tremble in protest, like it was alive, as if something below wanted to keep him in its clutches. As he reached for the doorknob, the walls vibrated, and the temperature plummeted. A breathless gasp escaped him. He turned back towards the mirror, compelled by an unseen force. The reflections were shifting again. Stay! The voices commanded, intertwining, weaving through his thoughts. The faces emerged, Evelyn among them, but now they were clearer, stricken with an emotional weight that bore down on Paul. He reached out, fingers inches from the glass. The mirror surged, pulsing like a living creature. Images of blood, betrayal, and chains flooded his vision. The raw agony contorted the faces. Find us. They echoed with a blend of sorrow and rage, each cry louder than the last. He recoiled, grasping his head, trying to shut it out. No, please. The room bristled with energy. The reality around him wavered like a mirage. Something was about to give. Something he dared not face, yet he felt it calling him deeper. Then, with a violent crack, the mirror shattered, spilling shards of darkness into the room. They swirled around him, rushing like a tempest. He was falling, down a spiraling tunnel of anguish, his own, or theirs. He couldn't tell that as he plummeted, the last thing he heard was their haunting chant blending into a singular scream. Don't forget. And then it was silent. What awaited him at the bottom of this void? What long-buried truth about Evelyn and himself would rise to the surface in this abyss? Darkness enveloped Paul, pressing on him from all sides. He felt weightless, suspended between moments, time folding like paper. Then a sensation sharp and cold pierced through the void. He gasped, lungs burning, as his body struck the ground of a musty, forgotten space. He lay there, disoriented, the hard floor beneath him grounding him in an unsettling reality. He blinked against the sudden glare of the lights flickering overhead. This was no comforting haven but a dreary cellar, the air thick with dampness and rancid must. Cold dread pooled in his stomach as he pushed himself to his feet, scanning his new surroundings. Scattered remnants of a lifelong silence littered the floor, old newspapers, dusty toys, and broken chairs that hinted at a family lost to time. A chill crawled along his skin. Had he fallen into a long-forgotten archive of despair? Footsteps echoed from somewhere deep within the shadows, slow and deliberate, like haunting whispers of the past. "Help us!" A voice slithered through the air, a familiar lure that stole his breath. It felt like an undercurrent, pulling at his heart, each syllable dripping with desperation. "Show yourself!" Paul called in a trembling voice, unsure if he could summon the strength. With each heartbeat, the shadows wove tighter, shaping themselves against the wall, dancing in the flicker of dying light. From the depths emerged a figure, a woman swathed in mist. Her long hair fell around her, strands shimmering in silver. As she stepped closer, clarity hit him like a punch to the gut. "Evelyn." "Paul." Her voice was a plea, rich with pain. She extended her hand, but it was imbalanced between them, as if there was a barrier neither could cross. "You came. What is this place?" he asked, the words barely escaping his lips. "What do you want from me?" "It's not what we want, it's what you need to confront." She glanced behind her, shadows pooling ominously. "The truth is buried here, Paul. You must dig it out before it consumes you." As she spoke, images flooded into Paul's mind, memories not his own. A gaggle of children, laughter trapped in fragile echoes. A man, rage in his eyes, clutching something he couldn't quite see. Chains, cold to the touch. He found himself recoiling, the sensation raw and searing. "Stop!" he shouted, stumbling back as Evelyn's image shimmered, flickering like the weak lights above. "I don't understand. You must remember." Her voice resonated, drowning beneath the weight of 1,000 memories. "You are not just a product of your past. You hold the key." Paul felt the floor rumble beneath him, a visceral reminder that he was anchored to something far more sinister. "What key?" "I don't understand." "Find the clasp, the truth within the lies," she urged, her figure drifting further. "What is forgotten in shadows is where the path lies, where I lay." And with that, she began to dissolve into the darkness, leaving him grappling with confusion and dread. "Evelyn!" he cried out, but it was too late. She vanished, flung back into the recesses of this all-consuming darkness. Panic surged through him, urging him to act, to seek answers in the chaos of the fading echoes. An overwhelming instinct pulled him toward a wall lined with peeling wallpaper. Beneath it, he could see faint outlines of a door, locked but there, pulsing with the energy of undiscovered truths. He approached it like a moth to flame, each step echoing with the weight of his lineage. What lurked behind the door? Would he find the answer that haunted his bloodline and Evelyn's desperate eyes, or would he unleash something darker than the shadows themselves? The questions roared in his head as he drew closer. And just as his fingers grazed the cold doorknob, a deafening crash broke the silence, sending a shudder through the room. The ground trembled, splitting beneath him, revealing a gaping chasm that threatened to swallow him whole. He staggered back, heart pounding, knowing that whatever lay beyond this door could either save him or seal his doom. What dark truth would he uncover, the one that could change everything he thought he knew about his family? The chasm yawned wide, a dark mouth ready to consume him. Paul stumbled back, grasping at thin air, pulse thundering in his ears. The echoing crash of collapsing earth rushed through the room like demons breaking free. He turned to face the door, the mysterious pulsating energy now mingled with pulsing dread. Was this truly the pathway, or was it a trap? The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of lost voices and muffled cries flaring in his mind. "Help us!" rang out again, this time more frantic, each syllable twisting his gut. Taking a ragged breath, he clenched his hands into fists. The panic clawing at his throat was suffocating, but he thrust it aside. Evelyn had reached out to him. She needed him to confront whatever darkness lingered here. The floor rattled again, and the whispers hissed like serpents, twisting around him. He knew then that he couldn't turn back, there was no escaping this fleeting moment of choice. With the weight of his past pressed against his chest, Paul approached the door once more, heart racing, fingers trembling as he sought the cold doorknob. His hand closed around it, metallic and unyielding. He pushed down, the knob grinding against stiff rust. With a final twist, the door creaked open, a slow, reluctant surrender. A blast of cold air coursed over him, skimming the surface of his skin, wrapping around his limbs like icy chains. Beyond the threshold lay a narrow corridor, walls flickering with strange luminescence that shadowed his every step. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, feeling the tangible weight of countless eyes watching from the darkness. "Find the clasp." Evelyn's voice echoed, deep in his gut. But what did it mean? What was he supposed to find? As he walked further inside, his gaze caught the distant flicker of light at the end of the corridor, a beacon against the darkness. He moved closer, each step sending tremors of fear through his spine. On the walls, fragmented photographs appeared, images of children playing. Their faces sparkled with joy that was unsettling in this grim world, and then he saw a photograph that made his breath hitch. A young girl with wide brown eyes. She looked so familiar. It wasn't just the resemblance, it was the way her laughter seemed to break the silence. He stumbled backwards as the realization hit him hard. The girl was Evelyn, but the photograph seemed to reach back decades, too many to count. "What have they done to you?" he whispered. Suddenly the air around him thickened, and the walls began to tremble. The laughter faded, replaced by an anguished scream that ripped through the silence like glass shattering. Paul's heart raced as he turned to run, but the corridor widened, expanding into a vast hall marred by shadows that in the center stood a pedestal adorned with intricate carvings, dark figures entwined around a clasp, their eyes hollow. Paul approached, drawn in helplessly. As he reached out, a vision flashed before him, the cold steel from before, chains clicking against one another, a man screaming in anger, the weight of a history he had long been disconnected from. He hesitated, his breath catching in his throat. The clasp was a key, both literal and figurative, something meant to unlock the hidden truths of his lineage. But to touch it, would it hold the salvation he craved, or would it unleash a darkness he couldn't fathom? Would he finally understand who he truly was, or would he pay the price for knowledge? Before he could decide, shadows surged towards him like waves crashing on the shore, engulfing him in inky despair. He felt the shadows clawing, dragging at his feet. With adrenaline pumping, he lunged for the clasp, determined to confront whatever lay ahead. As his fingers brushed its cool surface, energy crackled around him. He gasped, heart pounding, aware he was already closer to the truth than ever, yet still standing on a razor's edge. The door behind him slammed shut with a resounding bang. He was completely alone. The shadows pulsed with life, a sinister whisper reverberating through the darkened hall. "What dark legacy have you inherited, Paul? Will you embrace it or be consumed?" His pulse quickened as he felt the reality of his choice looming over him. He took a deep breath and prepared to uncover the unimaginable. Was he ready for what waited in the abyss? As his fingers lingered on the clasp, an electric current surged through him, igniting every nerve ending. The whispers transformed into a guttural roar, merging into a singular, relentless demand. "Unlock it. Set us free." Each word hit him like a wave, striking him with raw desperation. The ground beneath his feet trembled, a deep groan echoing through the hall, pulling him downward. Panic bubbled in his chest, but another feeling stirred, a need for clarity, for revelation. Paul gritted his teeth and pressed the clasp. A loud click resonated, and the floor bucked underneath him. Suddenly, the shadows twisted violently, swirling around the hall like a tempest. A vision sparked in his mind, the faces of children blurred into the darkness. Questions stormed through him. Who were they? How were they connected to Evelyn? To him? The air thickened, and the whispers morphed into screams, a choir in torment that pierced through his mind. "Help us! Help us!" The cries were haunting, striking at the very core of his soul. A thin whirling vortex formed around the clasp, revealing fragments of swirling images, long forgotten memories playing out like a broken film reel. He saw a family gathered around a table, laughter pulsating through the air. But then the scene shifted, morphing into shadowy figures looming over a child, their eyes filled with chaos and despair. Paul stumbled backward, heart racing. "What is this?" he gasped, trying to piece things together, but the connections slipped like grains of sand. "Every choice has consequences," a voice murmured from the depths of the shadows. Paul turned, chilling dread enveloping him. Emerging from the dark was a figure, cloaked and faceless, yet radiating an intense aura of power and malice. "To unlock the past is to accept your inheritance." "What inheritance?" Paul shouted, desperation mingling with anger. "What are you talking about?" The figure lifted an arm, fingers elongated like tendrils of night, pointing towards the swirling images. "The legacy of pain, of chains long forgotten. Your blood bears burdens that weigh heavier than the silence you've endured." Paul's head spun. He stumbled back towards the pedestal, grasping the clasp, fear clawing at him. "No, I did not choose this. Choices made generations ago bind you still," the figure hissed, and suddenly the hall was alive with memories. Each scream echoed louder, images flashing, families torn apart, a sinister presence, secrets hidden within layers of time. Sickened, Paul clutched the clasp tighter, feeling it warm beneath his grip. The warmth spread like a glow, illuminating the darkness surrounding him. "You can't keep me here," he screamed, forcing himself to resist the tidal wave of dread, but the figure stepped closer, shadows shifting, blending with the air around him. "You are not here by accident, child. The truth will carve its way through your mind. Are you prepared for the revelation?" In that instant, Paul realized that embracing the truth meant opening a door he could never close again. His past was not just his own, it was woven deeply into the fabric of others, a tapestry of tragedy, hope, and the weight of legacy. Gritting his teeth, breath hitching, he felt the energy around him alter, morphing from dread to desperation. "I have to know," he shouted, determination igniting within him. "Show me." And then, without further warning, the shadows converged. They spiraled upward, whirling around him, illuminated by a blinding light that exploded from the clasp. As his vision blurred, Paul felt himself slipping away, losing the solid ground beneath his feet. But in that profound darkness, a new idea sparked a possibility for understanding, a chance to confront the haunting legacy. And then, just like that, the light faded, and he found himself standing in an unfamiliar room. What awaited him here? Would the truth be a release or another prison? Paul stood in the unfamiliar room, heart pounding like a war drum. The walls closed in, but this place felt different. The air was thick, scented with something familiar yet strange, something warm yet woven with history. He blinked against the light, trying to make sense of where he was and what he had unleashed upon himself. A mirror hung on the wall, but this one was unbreakable, polished to reflect not just the physical form of those standing before it. Here, the mirror was a portal. As he approached, images flooded his mind, washing over him in crashing waves. Faces, places, events, flashes of joy mixed with waves of sorrow, each moment a thread in the tapestry of his lineage. His heart thudded faster as he realized he was being shown the legacy of his family, the lineage of pain and struggle that tangled around his existence. Each face bore the scars of those who had lived before him, echoing their unspoken stories through time. In one image, he saw Evelyn, her eyes alight with the kind of hope that crushed under the weight of despair. In another, shadows moved like phantoms, obscuring the fates of souls long forgotten, pleading for consequence and recognition. Feeling each sorrow as his own, Paul took a deep breath and made a decision. "I will honor you," he whispered to the images. "I will find a way to set you free." As he spoke, the air shifted, the whispers of his ancestors swirling around him, a mixture of fear and relief that urged him onward. He turned from the mirror and marched through the door that led to the next room, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. There, a wooden table held an assortment of objects, a rusty chain, frayed pieces of fabric, and even a diary, its pages tattered but its words still vivid. This was the room of history. It pulsed with stories of the people who had once thrived here. As he searched the objects, one caught his eye, a simple key, nestled among the debris. Feeling drawn to it, he picked it up and let its weight settle in his palm. The key was old, beautifully crafted with ornate designs, curling into each spiral like a story yet to be told. "Find the clasp," Evelyn's words echoed in his mind again, clearer now. It wasn't just about unearthing the past, it was finding closure, the final piece of this haunting puzzle. With renewed purpose, Paul dashed back into the previous room, the images still resonating with his heartbeats, and approached the pedestal. Holding the key above the clasp, he felt a surge of energy flow between them. Now, he understood the clasp wasn't just a lock, it was a bond, a symbol of all that had been hidden from view. Could he break the chains that bound them all? He placed the key into the clasp, a perfect fit, and turned it gently. The moment he did, the room exploded in light, a brilliant brightness that washed over everything. Paul shielded his eyes as the shadows began to scatter, revealing figures emerging from the darkness. They gathered around him, former ghosts of the estate, their faces illuminated with an ethereal glow. Evelyn stepped forward, shimmering with hope. "Thank you," she breathed, her voice warm like sunlight. "You freed us from the weight of silence." In that moment, Paul realized the truth was as powerful as it was scary. Each freed spirit carried a piece of the truth he sought. Through their shared connection, through the pain acknowledged and the history confronted, he found solace amid chaos. A sudden stillness wrapped around him, a final gift from those who had come before. He could feel their gratitude woven with a sense of closure, binding him to them. In his heart, he felt not only the terror of the past but the relief of its release. "Embrace your history," Evelyn whispered, her form shimmering until she faded into the light. "You are not defined by it, but it is a part of who you are." As the last shimmer of light dissipated, Paul stood alone, the remnants of the estate now silent beneath the weight of understanding. No longer haunted but liberated, he smiled, a weight lifted from his chest. With a final glance back, he stepped through the doorway into a new world. Paul was ready to face tomorrow, a world where the past would guide him, not bind him, and with that, Paul walked forward, determined to honor the legacy he'd inherited while forging a path free from its burdens. This is it. You need to subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help this community grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your voices matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference, and only true fans understand the importance of these actions.